They say fashion is all about appearances, but the best designs often hide their true complexity beneath a simple surface. The same could be said for success in the fashion industry. My name is Isabella Martinez, and this is the story of how my aunt's attempt to humiliate me backfired in the most spectacular way possible. The annual Fashion Week Gala in Milan was a sea of designer gowns and carefully curated personas. I watched from a quiet corner as my aunt, Victoria Sterling, held court among fashion's elite. Her label, Sterling Couture, was considered the epitome of old-world luxury, and she never let anyone forget it. "Darling, you simply must see our new collection," she gushed to a famous editor. "We're redefining luxury for the modern era." What Victoria didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that while she was clinging to outdated fashion formulas, I had spent the last decade building Casa Blanc into the most innovative luxury brand in the industry. The same brand that was about to acquire Sterling Couture. "Isabella." Victoria's voice cut through my thoughts. "Come here, dear. Show everyone your little project." I approached the group wearing a deceptively simple black dress of my own design. The construction was revolutionary, using techniques I developed in my little workshop, but to Victoria, it probably looked plain compared to her over-embellished creations. "My niece," Victoria announced to her audience, "runs a small dressmaking shop. Very artisanal." The way she said it made it sound like a quaint hobby. "How interesting," murmured a fashion journalist. "In these days of fast fashion, it's nice to see someone keeping old traditions alive." Victoria's smile was pure condescension. "Yes, Isabella has always been traditional." Though perhaps if she'd accepted my offer to learn real fashion business at Sterling, she might have progressed beyond basic alterations. If only she knew that Casa Blanc's innovative designs and sustainable practices had revolutionized the industry, that our profit margins were triple those of traditional luxury houses, that our waiting lists for custom pieces stretched months long. "Everyone has their place in fashion," Victoria continued. "Not all of us can be visionaries after all." I thought about the folder on my laptop containing the final acquisition papers, about how Casa Blanc had systematically purchased Sterling Couture's debt through shell companies over the past year, about the press release scheduled for tomorrow morning. "How is Sterling Couture doing?" asked another journalist. "I heard rumors about financial difficulties." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Mere speculation. We're stronger than ever. In fact, we're in talks with several major investors." "Really?" I kept my voice neutral. I heard the last quarter's numbers were concerning. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "And where would Seamstress hear such things?" "One picks up interesting information in a small shop," I replied. "People talk while being fitted." My phone buzzed. A message from my CEO, technically my employee, though Victoria thought she was my boss at the small shop. "Final contract signed. Press embargo lifts at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Perfect timing. Victoria's latest collection was set to debut at 10 a.m. "Speaking of fittings," Victoria said loudly, "perhaps you could help with some last-minute alterations for tomorrow's show? We could pay you your usual, modest rate." Several people tittered. Victoria had been doing this for years, trying to put me in my place by treating me like household staff at industry events. "I'm afraid I'm quite busy," I replied. "Running a business takes considerable time, even a small one." "A business." Victoria laughed. "Darling, let's be realistic. You have a charming little hobby that barely pays its rent. This," she gestured around the opulent gala, "is a real fashion business." I thought about Casa Blanc's headquarters in Paris, our sustainable production facilities in Italy, our innovative design studios in New York and Tokyo, about the revolutionary fabric technologies we developed, the patents we held, the way we transformed luxury fashion production, while maintaining absolute secrecy about our ownership. "Perhaps you're right," I said mildly. "Though sometimes success isn't about size or appearance, it's about innovation and timing." Victoria missed my meaning entirely, already turning back to her admirers. "Innovation is overrated. True luxury is about tradition, about maintaining standards. That's why Sterling Couture will always be an industry leader." My phone buzzed again. The final confirmation I'd been waiting for. Our teams were already in place at Sterling's production facilities, ready to begin the transition the moment the announcement was made. Later that night, in my hotel suite, Not the modest room Victoria would have expected, but the royal suite she tried and failed to book. I reviewed the morning's press release one final time. The fashion world was about to learn that Casablanca, the mysterious brand that had revolutionized luxury fashion, had acquired sterling couture. That the small dressmaking shop Victoria had mocked was actually a front for one of the most successful fashion innovations in decades. But first, I had one more fitting to attend. Victoria had insisted I come to her studio early tomorrow to observe a real fashion show preparation. Little did she know, she was about to get a masterclass in modern luxury fashion management. The morning of Sterling Couture's fashion show dawned bright and clear in Milan. I arrived at Victoria's studio at 7 a.m., watching the chaos unfold from a quiet corner. Models were being fitted, makeup artists were rushing about, and my aunt was in full director mode. No, 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 Victoria shouted at a trembling assistant. The sequins must catch the light exactly right. This is luxury fashion, not some department store display. What she didn't notice was that several key people in the room, her production manager, head of PR, and chief financial officer, were glancing at their phones with increasing frequency. The press embargo would lift in exactly 1 hour. Isabella. Victoria spotted me. Come see how real fashion is created. Though try not to get in the way, we can't have any amateur interference today. I smiled, thinking of the 3 Casablanca shows I'd already orchestrated this week under my secret identity as the brand's founder. Of course, I'm here to learn. If only you'd shown such interest years ago, she sighed dramatically. You could have been part of all this. Instead, she gestured at my simple black dress, the same one from last night. Well, we all make our choices. My phone buzzed. A message from Casablanca's PR team. Financial press has the story. Fashion blogs are getting wind of it. Countdown to announcement, 30 minutes. Victoria was still lecturing about the importance of proper fashion management when her PR director approached, looking nervous. Miss Sterling, there's some unusual activity on social media. Rumors about Sterling Couture. Probably just excitement about today's show, Victoria said dismissively. Though do make sure those photos from last night's gala are prominently featured. The one with the Vogue editor especially. It's not about the show, the PR director said carefully. It's about ownership changes. Major financial news sites are hinting at a significant announcement. Victoria's face tightened. What ownership changes? That's ridiculous. We've been approached by investors, yes, but nothing is final. Actually, I said, checking my watch, something is very final. In about 15 minutes, to be precise. She turned to me, confusion crossing her features. What are you talking about? Perhaps we should step into your office, I suggested. There are some things you should hear before the press release goes live. The next few minutes were surreal, as we sat in Victoria's opulent office, all gold fixtures and oversized fashion photographs. I watched her world slowly unravel. Casablanca, she whispered, reading the press release I'd handed her. But they're the most innovative luxury brand in the industry. They've revolutionized everything from fabric technology to production methods. Yes, I agreed. We have. We. Her head snapped up. What do you mean we? I founded Casablanca 10 years ago. That little dressmaking shop you love to mock? It's where we test new designs and techniques before implementing them across the brand. Victoria's hands were shaking. This is impossible. You're a seamstress. I'm a designer, innovator, and businesswoman. The fact that you never saw beyond the surface says more about you than it does about me. Her phone began ringing, fashion journalists seeking comment on the breaking news. Outside her office, we could hear the growing commotion as staff members read the announcement on their phones. But how? Victoria stammered. The capital required, the connections needed. Remember when you refused to modernize Sterling's production methods? When you dismissed sustainable fashion as a passing trend? While you were clinging to outdated luxury concepts, Casablanca was building the future of fashion. I pulled up the numbers on my tablet, Sterling's declining sales against Casablanca's meteoric rise. The innovation patents we held. The sustainability awards we'd won. Your choice now is simple. I continued. You can fight this and watch Sterling Couture disappear, or you can join us in creating something better. Your technical skills are excellent when you're not blinded by ego. Join you? She laughed bitterly. Become an employee in my own company. No, become a partner in a bigger vision. Sterling Coucher's heritage combined with Casablanca's innovation could create something extraordinary. The office door burst open, her CFO rushing in with panic in his eyes. Victoria, have you seen the news? Casablanca, they've acquired controlling interests. Our stock is soaring. Yes, Thomas, she said quietly. I've just been talking with Casablanca's founder. She looked at me with new eyes, seeing beyond the simple black dress for the first time. My niece, apparently. The transformation of Sterling Couture began immediately. We maintained the brand's heritage while modernizing its approach. Victoria, once she got over her shock, proved to be a valuable partner, her eye for classical luxury complementing Casablanca's innovative techniques. The fashion press had a field day with the story. Fashion's greatest revelation. Casablanca founder unveiled, read one headline. From seamstress to fashion empire, the industry's best-kept secret, declared another. A year later, I stood on the runway after our first combined show, Sterling by Casablanca. The collection married Victoria's classic sensibilities with our cutting-edge technology. The result was extraordinary. Victoria approached me as the applause died down. I've been meaning to ask, that black dress, the one you wore to the gala, it wasn't simple at all, was it? I smiled. Look closer. I showed her the seams, the innovative construction, the way the fabric responded to movement. Sometimes the most revolutionary designs look deceptively simple on the surface. Like a successful businesswoman disguised as a seamstress, she shook her head ruefully. I should have known. Your grandmother, my sister, she always said you'd surprise us all someday. The mention of my grandmother, the woman who taught me my first stitches and encouraged me to dream bigger, wrought a wave of emotion. She hadn't lived to see my success, but she believed in it from the start. She also said something else. I reminded Victoria that true luxury isn't about labels or logos. It's about quality, innovation, and respect for the craft. Victoria finished. I forgot that somewhere along the way. Got caught up in the image rather than the substance. These days, our combined brands lead the industry in both innovation and classic luxury. The small dressmaking shop still operates, now openly acknowledged as Casablanca's research and development hub. Young designers vie for the chance to work there, learning that true fashion innovation can come from the most unexpected places. Last week, I overheard Victoria telling a group of fashion students, success in this industry isn't about who you appear to be. It's about what you can create, what you can innovate, and most importantly, what you can see in others. She caught my eye across the room and smiled. The aunt who had once dismissed me as just a seamstress had learned to look beneath the surface. And in doing so, she helped create something greater than either of us could have built alone. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's empire, it's about showing them a better way to build one. You get nothing. Amanda's voice echoed through my living room as she waved the wedding invitation in my face. James is marrying Olivia next month, and guess what? No divorce, no property division. You're just getting kicked to the curb. She was practically bouncing with glee as she delivered the news that my husband of 8 years planned to marry his mistress without divorcing me first. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the familiar warmth steady my hands. Thanks for telling me, I replied calmly, watching confusion flicker across my sister-in-law's face. She clearly expected tears, maybe some screaming or begging. Instead, she got a smile that seemed to unnerve her more than any outburst would have. My name is Sophia Martinez, and at 34, I had just learned that my husband thought he could start a new life without legally ending our marriage. What Amanda didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for the past 6 months. That's it. Amanda pressed, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. Did you hear what I said? James is marrying Olivia. The ceremony's already planned. Their new house is being renovated. You're nothing to him now? I set my coffee cup down carefully. I heard you perfectly. Is there anything else? Amanda's triumphant smile faltered. This wasn't going according to her script. She'd always been like this, taking pleasure in delivering bad news, especially to me. From the moment I married her precious brother, I was never good enough for their family. You're being weird, she said, narrowing her eyes. Why aren't you upset? James is replacing you with someone younger, prettier, from a better family. You should be crying. I thought about the last 6 months, about the quiet preparations I'd made after finding lipstick on James's collar. Such a cliche, really. The late night calls, the suspicious business trips, the sudden need for privacy with his phone. I remembered the moment I found messages between him and Olivia, planning their future while plotting to leave me with nothing. But I also remembered my grandmother's words from years ago. The smartest players are the ones who let others think they're losing. Amanda, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I appreciate you taking the time to deliver the news personally. She took a step back, thrown by my composure. You're up to something, she accused. I know you. You're planning some kind of scene at the wedding, aren't you? I laughed softly. No scenes. No drama. I genuinely hope James and Olivia will be very happy together. Mom was right about you. Amanda spat, gathering her designer purse. You never deserved James. You're not even fighting for him. As she stormed toward the door, I called after her. Amanda, tell James congratulations from me. The door slammed behind her, and I waited until I heard her car start before pulling out my phone. With steady fingers, I dialed a number I'd memorized months ago. Mr. Wilson, it's Sophia. Everything's proceeding exactly as we expected. They've set a wedding date for next month. I paused, listening to his response. Yes, Amanda just left. She was kind enough to show me the invitation. No, they still have no idea. Yes, I think it's time to move forward with the next phase. I hung up and walked to the window, watching Amanda's car disappear around the corner. She'd run straight to James, telling him how strangely I'd behaved, how I must be plotting something. They'd worked themselves into a frenzy trying to figure out my angle, but they were looking in the wrong direction entirely. Opening my laptop, I checked my email. The confirmation I'd been waiting for had arrived. All the documentation was in order. Every transaction James had made in the past year, every account he tried to hide, every piece of evidence of his relationship with Olivia, all of it carefully cataloged and verified. I opened the safe hidden behind our wedding photo, ironic placement, really, and pulled out the small leather notebook where I'd kept my own records. 6 months of careful planning, of playing the unsuspecting wife while quietly building my case. James thought he was so clever, planning his new life with Olivia, thinking he could simply walk away from our marriage without consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Just accept that you've lost. I smiled at her message, thinking of the meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. James, Olivia, and their perfect plans were about to hit a wall they never saw coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making a scene or fighting back. It's simply being prepared. Setting the phone down, I walked to our bedroom, soon to be just mine, and began methodically removing James' expensive suits from the closet. He'd want these for his new life with Olivia. I folded each one carefully, remembering the day I'd found the first hint of his betrayal. A receipt for a diamond bracelet I'd never received, tucked into one of these very suit pockets. That day had changed everything, but instead of confronting him, I'd started planning. James always underestimated me, treated me like I was naive, easily manipulated. He was about to learn just how wrong he'd been. I heard my phone buzz again, probably another gloating message from Amanda. Opening my dresser drawer, I pulled out the wedding invitation Amanda had so gleefully waved in my face. Next to it, I placed the file Mr. Wilson had prepared. The contrast was almost poetic, their elaborate plans for a future that was about to implode, and my simple documentation that would tear it all apart. Time to show them what nothing looks like, I whispered to myself, closing the drawer with a soft click. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my favorite charcoal gray suit, a gift from James during happier times. By 9 a.m., I was seated in Mr. Wilson's office, reviewing the final details of our plan. They should be arriving any minute, he said, arranging the documents on his polished mahogany desk. James believes this is a standard meeting about his new property purchase with Olivia. Right on cue, we heard voices in the hallway. James entered first, his confident stride faltering slightly when he saw me. Olivia followed, then Amanda, who must have invited herself along to witness what she thought would be my humiliation. What is she doing here? Amanda demanded, while James's face darkened with anger. Sophia, he said coldly, this is a private meeting. You need to leave. Mr. Wilson stood, his expression professional but firm. Actually, Mrs. Martinez is exactly where she needs to be. Please, everyone take a seat. Mrs. Martinez? Olivia questioned, her perfectly manicured hand gripping James's arm. I thought you said the marriage was never legally registered. I watched James's face pale slightly. That had been his story to Olivia. That our marriage wasn't legal. That he was free to marry her without complications. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her chair, suddenly less certain of her brother's carefully constructed narrative. About that, Mr. Wilson began, opening a thick file. I have here the legal marriage certificate for James and Sophia Martinez, dated 8 years ago. Properly filed, completely legitimate. This is ridiculous, James interrupted, standing up. We're here about the house purchase. I don't have time for whatever game Sophia is playing. Ah yes, the house purchase, Mr. Wilson continued calmly. The luxury property you're attempting to buy with funds from your joint accounts with Mrs. Martinez. That's actually why we're all here today. I watched as understanding slowly dawned on their faces. James sank back into his chair, while Olivia's grip on his arm loosened. Over the past 6 months, I spoke for the first time, my voice steady. James has been systematically moving money from our joint accounts into a private account. Money we earned together, money meant for our future. You had no right to track my finances, James snapped, but Mr. Wilson held up a hand. As his legal wife, she had every right. Moreover, Mrs. Martinez has documented evidence of financial misconduct, including attempts to hide marital assets and make unauthorized transfers. Amanda's smugness had completely evaporated. James, she whispered, what did you do? Mr. Wilson laid out document after document, bank statements, property records, evidence of James's attempts to hide our marital assets. Each piece of paper stripped away another layer of his carefully constructed deception. The house you're planning to buy, I said quietly, you're using our joint savings for the down payment, money we saved together over 8 years of marriage. Did you tell Olivia that? Olivia stood up abruptly, her face flushed. You said it was your money, she accused James. You said there wouldn't be any complications. The complications, Mr. Wilson interjected, are quite significant. Attempting to purchase property with marital assets while planning to deceive your legal spouse is fraud, Mr. Martinez. James' confidence had completely crumbled. This isn't what it looks like, he tried, but even Amanda was shaking her head. Mrs. Martinez isn't interested in pressing charges, Mr. Wilson continued. What she wants is a fair and legal division of assets, starting with the immediate freezing of all joint accounts and a proper divorce settlement. I pulled out a document of my own, a comprehensive list of our marital assets and a proposed division that my lawyer had prepared. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's happiness, I said, looking directly at James. I just want what's fair. The room fell silent as James stared at the papers in front of him. His perfect plan was unraveling, and for once he had no smooth answers, no easy escape. If you refuse to cooperate, Mr. Wilson added, Mrs. Martinez is prepared to take this matter to court, where all of this would become public record. I watched as Olivia gathered her designer handbag, her engagement ring catching the morning light. We'll discuss this later, she said to James, her voice icy. I need to make some calls. As she left, Amanda stood up too, looking at her brother like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Mom's going to have a fit when she hears about this, she muttered, following Olivia out. James and I were left alone with Mr. Wilson. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 8 years of shared history and 6 months of betrayal. Why didn't he just talk to me? He finally asked, his voice hoarse. Why all this secret planning? I stood up, smoothing my suit jacket. Would you have listened? Or would you have just found a way to hide everything better? He had no answer for that. As I walked to the door, I turned back one last time. I loved you, James. I deserved better than being discarded without a second thought. Leaving the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The carefully constructed plan had worked perfectly, but more importantly, I finally stood up for myself. Amanda's words echoed in my mind. You get nothing. She had been wrong about so many things, but mostly about what nothing really meant. The weeks following the meeting brought changes I hadn't expected. Olivia disappeared from the picture entirely, apparently deciding that a man who would lie about his marriage wasn't worth the drama. Amanda, surprisingly, was the first family member to reach out. I owe you an apology, she said over coffee at a small cafe downtown. I was horrible to you, and I was wrong. I stirred my latte, watching the foam swirl. Why the change of heart? After the meeting, I did some digging, she admitted. Found out about all the lies James had told everyone, not just Olivia. He even lied to Mom about where the wedding money was coming from. She paused, looking genuinely remorseful. I was so busy being his loyal sister that I never stopped to question anything. The divorce proceedings moved forward smoothly after that. James, stripped of his bravado and schemes, agreed to a fair settlement. The joint accounts were divided equitably, and I kept our house, the one I'd helped pay for with years of hard work. One evening, as I was sorting through old photos, deciding what to keep and what to let go, my phone buzzed with a text from James's mother. "Can we talk?" she asked. "There's something you should know." We met in her garden, the same place where James and I had taken our engagement photos years ago. She looked older and more tired than I remembered. James's father was the same way, she said quietly, pruning her roses. Always chasing something new, thinking he could outsmart everyone. I stayed, made excuses for him. "You're stronger than I was." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small key. "This opens a safety deposit box at First National. I've been saving something for years, just in case any of my children needed it." She pressed the key into my hand. "Use it wisely." Inside the box, I found documentation of James's father's similar schemes. Hidden accounts, attempted property transfers, patterns that James had unknowingly repeated. I didn't need it anymore, but the gesture meant something. His mother had seen the signs and had prepared, just like I had. 6 months after the meeting in Mr. Wilson's office, I stood in my newly redecorated living room, looking at the space that was now truly mine. The walls were painted in colors I'd chosen, decorated with art that spoke to me. No more compromise, no more dimming my preferences to match someone else's expectations. Amanda visited regularly now, our relationship transformed into something I never expected, genuine friendship. She helped me redesign the garden, turning it into a peaceful retreat. "You know what's funny?" she said one day as we planted new flowers. "James is the one who ended up with nothing. No wife, no girlfriend, no house. All because he thought he could have everything without consequences." I thought about that as I worked in my garden, about how nothing and everything could look so different depending on where you stood. I had lost a marriage but gained self-respect. Lost a husband but found my strength. The final divorce papers arrived on a sunny Tuesday morning. As I signed them, I remembered Amanda's gleeful declaration that I would get nothing. She had been right, in a way. I got nothing of what they thought mattered. No drama, no revenge, no public scenes. Instead, I got everything that truly counted: my dignity, my independence, and the satisfaction of knowing I had handled things on my own terms. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party, my first as a single woman. Amanda was there, along with James's mother and a few close friends who had supported me throughout everything. We raised our glasses in a toast, not to endings or beginnings, but to truth and resilience. To getting nothing, Amanda said with a wink, and gaining everything. As laughter filled my home, I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago. Listening to Amanda's cruel announcement, she had no idea that her attempt to break me would only reveal how unbreakable I had become. Looking around at the warm faces of people who had seen my true worth, I realized that sometimes getting nothing was the best thing that could happen to you. It cleared the space for something better, something real. The garden lights twinkled through the windows as night fell, and I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of my story. Not as someone's wife, someone's sister-in-law, or someone's disappointment, but as myself, complete and whole, ready for whatever came next. And that was worth everything. "You're just a gold digger," Amanda sneered, standing in my kitchen with her designer purse clutched to her chest like a shield. "Everyone knows you trapped my brother with your innocent act. Now do us all a favor and leave." I continued washing the dishes, letting the warm water run over my hands as I tried to maintain my composure. After 5 years of marriage to James, you'd think his sister would have found a new target for her venom. But no, Amanda had made it her life's mission to prove I married her brother for his family's money. My name is Sofia Martinez, and at 32, I found myself defending my marriage yet again. Not against outside threats, but against the poison that seeped from within the family itself. James was away on a work trip, which meant Amanda felt emboldened to make her weekly visit to remind me how unworthy I was of the Anderson family name. "Are you even listening?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "James is filing for divorce. He knows all about your little scheme now. That made me pause. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands slowly, deliberately. What scheme would that be, Amanda? She smiled, the kind of smile that reminded me of a predator about to pounce. The way you pretended to work at that coffee shop, making yourself look poor and helpless. How you orchestrated meeting James there, knowing he always stopped for his morning coffee. You played him perfectly, didn't you? I couldn't help but laugh, which only seemed to infuriate her more. I worked at that coffee shop to put myself through nursing school. Unlike some people, I'm not afraid of honest work. Please, she scoffed, pulling out her phone. I have proof now. Someone sent me interesting information about your past. Seems like you've tried this routine before, haven't you? Getting close to wealthy men, trying to sink your claws in. My heart skipped a beat, but not for the reasons Amanda assumed. I knew exactly who would have contacted her, and why. Let me guess, I said, keeping my voice steady. Someone named Marcus reached out to you. The slight widening of her eyes told me I was right. So you admit it. You know him. Oh, I know Marcus, I replied, walking toward the stairs. Would you like to see something interesting, Amanda? Since you're so concerned about the family's welfare. She followed me up to the attic, her heels clicking against the wooden steps like angry exclamation points. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dusty window, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. I moved purposefully toward an old trunk in the corner, one I hadn't opened since the day I married James. What are you doing? Amanda demanded, watching as I pulled out a key I kept on a chain around my neck. Showing you the truth, I said simply, unlocking the trunk. Since you're so interested in my past with Marcus. The hinges creaked as I lifted the lid, revealing stacks of yellowed newspapers, old photographs, and legal documents. On top lay a front-page article from 15 years ago. Its headlines still bold despite the passage of time. Tech mogul's son arrested in investment scandal. Amanda snatched the paper, her eyes scanning the text rapidly. I knew what she was reading. The story of how Marcus Reynolds, son of a wealthy tech executive, had been caught running an elaborate investment scam targeting young women. The article mentioned his arrest, but more importantly, it mentioned the key witness who had helped bring him down. A 19-year-old barista named Sofia Martinez. This can't be right, Amanda stammered, looking between me and the article. Marcus said you were his accomplice, that you helped him scam people. I pulled out more documents, police reports, court transcripts, and a letter of commendation from the FBI. I worked undercover with the FBI for 6 months to gather evidence against him. Marcus lost everything, his money, his freedom, his family's reputation. He spent 8 years in prison, and now he's trying to get revenge by poisoning my new life. Amanda sank onto an old chair, the paper trembling in her hands. But you were just a coffee shop worker. How did you? I was a criminal justice student working part-time, I corrected her. When I noticed Marcus's pattern with other young women who came into the shop, I contacted the authorities. They asked for my help building a case against him. I pulled out one final document, a certified letter from the FBI stating that the majority of Marcus's seized assets had been returned to his victims, thanks to my testimony. I could have taken the reward money they offered, could have sold my story to the press. But I didn't, because it was never about the money, Amanda. It was about doing what was right. The silence in the attic was heavy with the weight of shattered assumptions. Amanda stared at the evidence of my past, her carefully constructed narrative about me crumbling before her eyes. Does James know about all this? She finally asked, her voice small. No, I said quietly, because unlike some people, I don't think the past defines who we are. I married James because I love him, not because of his family's money or status. I've never needed either. I began placing the documents back in the trunk, each one a reminder of a chapter in my life I'd chosen to keep private, not out of shame, but because I'd wanted to build a new life based on who I was now, not who I'd been forced to become at 19. I think you should leave now, Amanda, I said, closing the trunk. And the next time Marcus or anyone else tries to feed you stories about me, remember what you saw today. Remember that appearances can be deceiving, just not in the way you always assumed. She stood up shakily, clutching her designer purse like a lifeline. As she headed toward the attic stairs, she paused. Why didn't you ever tell us? It would have changed everything. I smiled sadly. Would it? Or would you have just found another reason to doubt me? Some people only see what they want to see, Amanda. I learned that lesson a long time ago. As I watched her leave, I knew this wasn't over. The truth about my past was out now, and soon James would know everything. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt strangely peaceful. Sometimes the best defense isn't in hiding who you are, but in finally letting the truth come to light. I pulled out my phone and texted James a simple message. We need to talk when you get home. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. The house felt eerily quiet after Amanda left. I sat in the living room, surrounded by photo albums I'd pulled from the shelves. Pictures of James and me on our honeymoon, holiday gatherings with his family, moments of happiness I'd captured and preserved, hoping they'd somehow prove my worth to the Andersons. My phone buzzed with James' reply. Is everything okay? I can catch an earlier flight. Before I could respond, another message popped up, this one from an unknown number. My heart sank as I read it. Did you really think you could keep your past hidden forever, Sophia? I told you I'd make you pay for what you did to me. Marcus. I blocked the number immediately, but the damage was done. Marcus was clearly determined to destroy the life I'd built. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was still trying to control and manipulate, just like he had 15 years ago. The doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret, my mother-in-law, standing there with Amanda. Of course, Amanda had gone straight to her mother with her discovery. I opened the door, steeling myself for what was coming. Margaret swept past me into the house, her expensive perfume trailing behind her like a warning sign. Amanda told me everything, she announced, turning to face me with the same cold expression I'd seen countless times at family dinners. About your involvement with that criminal, Marcus Reynolds. Did she tell you the whole story? I asked quietly. Or just the version Marcus wants you to believe? She showed me the newspaper articles, Margaret said, her voice sharp. My son married someone who was involved in a criminal investigation. Do you have any idea what this could do to our family's reputation? I walked to the attic stairs. Follow me. Both of you need to see something. This time, I pulled everything out of the trunk, not just the newspaper articles, but the commendation letters, the victim statements, the photos of young women who'd lost their savings to Marcus's scheme. I spread them across the attic floor, creating a timeline of truth that couldn't be denied. I was 19. I began, my voice steady. Working at the coffee shop, studying criminal justice. Marcus would come in, always targeting young women who seemed vulnerable. He charmed them, convinced them to invest their savings in his exclusive investment program. By the time I noticed the pattern, he'd already stolen from dozens of victims. Margaret picked up one of the victim statements, her eyes widening as she read the details of Marcus's manipulation tactics. The FBI asked for my help. I continued. I agreed to wear a wire, to let Marcus think I was another potential victim. For 6 months, I gathered evidence while watching him destroy more lives. When they finally arrested him, he looked me in the eye and swore he'd make me pay someday. But why didn't you tell us? Amanda asked, her earlier hostility replaced by something that almost looked like respect. Because I wanted a chance at a normal life, I replied. When I met James, it was 2 years after the trial. He was kind, genuine, everything Marcus had pretended to be. I fell in love with him because he saw me for who I was, not what I could offer him. Margaret sat down heavily on an old chair. All this time we thought. You thought I was a gold digger, I finished for her. Because it was easier to believe I had ulterior motives than to accept that maybe, just maybe, your son could love someone from a different background. Sophia? A voice called from downstairs, James's voice. My heart stopped. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. Heavy footsteps on the attic stairs, and then he was there, taking in the scene before him. His wife, mother, and sister surrounded by evidence of a past I'd kept hidden. I caught an earlier flight, he said, his eyes fixed on the newspaper article in his mother's hands. Amanda called me, told me there was something I needed to know about you. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly. I should have told you long ago, James. I'm sorry. He walked over, picking up the FBI commendation letter. His eyes scanned it quickly, then moved to the victim statements, the court documents, the photos. No one spoke as he pieced together the story of who I had been before I became his wife. Finally, he looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't expected. Pride. You helped put him away, he said softly. You risked your life to protect other women. Yes, I whispered. He turned to his mother and sister. All these years you've judged her, questioned her motives, made her feel like she wasn't good enough. And all this time she was more honorable than any of us." James, Margaret started, but he cut her off. "No, Mom. You and Amanda owe Sophia an apology. Not just for today, but for every snide comment, every subtle dig, every moment you made her feel unwelcome in this family." I touched his arm gently. "James, they didn't know." "That's the point," he said firmly. "They never tried to know you. They were so convinced they knew your type that they never bothered to learn who you really are." The attic fell silent again, but this time it felt different. The truth lay scattered around us in black and white, undeniable and transformative. Margaret stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. I think we owe you more than an apology," she said quietly. "We owe you the chance to be truly part of this family." Amanda nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Sophia, for everything." I looked at them. These women who had made me doubt myself for 5 years, and felt something shift inside me. The past I tried so hard to hide had finally come to light, and instead of destroying my marriage, it had somehow made it stronger. James pulled me close, kissing the top of my head. "No more secrets," he murmured. "No more secrets," I agreed, feeling truly secure in his love for the first time since our wedding day. As Margaret and Amanda left, promising to help deal with any fallout from Marcus's attempts at revenge, I realized that sometimes the very things we try to hide become our greatest strengths when brought into the light. 2 weeks after the revelation in the attic, life had shifted in ways I never expected. The Anderson family dynamics had transformed. Margaret now called regularly, not to criticize but to genuinely check on me. Amanda had become an unexpected ally, using her legal connections to help protect me from Marcus's continued attempts at revenge. But Marcus wasn't finished. One morning, I arrived at the hospital where I worked as a nurse to find him waiting in the parking lot. He looked older than I remembered, prison time evident in the hardness of his face. "Hello, Sophia," he said, pushing off his expensive car, still playing the noble hero. I stood my ground, my hand already on my phone. "You need to leave, Marcus, now." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I lost everything because of you. My family's reputation, my future, all of it gone because you couldn't mind your own business. You lost everything because you stole from innocent women." I corrected him. "I just made sure you faced the consequences." He took a step closer. "And now you've built this perfect little life for yourself. The devoted nurse, the loving wife, the respected member of society. It would be a shame if something happened to ruin all that." "Step away from my wife." James's voice cut through the tension. He emerged from his car, walking purposefully toward us. Behind him, I saw Amanda's car pull up and 2 police officers I recognized from her law firm. Marcus's smug expression faltered. "This is a private conversation." "Nothing about this is private," Amanda said, joining us with the officers. "We've documented every attempt you've made to harass Sophia. Every call, every message, every threat." One of the officers stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, you're in violation of your parole by being here. You were explicitly forbidden from contacting Ms. Martinez or her family." I watched as they arrested him, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. James wrapped his arm around me, solid and supportive. "How did you know?" I asked him. "One of your coworkers saw him lurking earlier and called me," he explained. I reached out to Amanda immediately. Later that evening, the entire Anderson family gathered at our house. Margaret had insisted on a family dinner, saying we needed to do things properly from now on. As we sat around the dining table, I looked at these people who had once been my harshest critics. Margaret was sharing stories from James's childhood, actually including me in the conversation. Amanda was discussing how we could use my experience to help other women avoid similar scams. "I've been thinking," Margaret said, setting down her wine glass. "The family's charitable foundation could use someone with your insight, Sophia. Would you consider joining the board?" I nearly choked on my drink. The Anderson Family Foundation was Margaret's pride and joy, her way of maintaining the family's social standing. She had never even hinted at including me before. "Are you sure?" I asked carefully. "Of course she's sure," Amanda interjected. "Your experience with Marcus, your nursing background, you understand better than any of us how to actually help people." James squeezed my hand under the table. "What do you think, love?" I looked around at their expectant faces and felt tears well up in my eyes. "I'd be honored," I said softly. Margaret reached across the table and took my other hand. "No, Sophia. We're the ones who are honored. You've shown us what true strength and integrity look like. We were so busy judging you that we couldn't see the amazing woman my son was lucky enough to marry." That night, after everyone had left, James and I sat on our back porch looking at the stars. The same stars I used to look at 15 years ago, wondering if I was brave enough to stand up to Marcus. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning against James's shoulder. "I spent so long trying to prove I was good enough for your family. But in the end, it was my past, the very thing I was trying to hide, that finally made them see me." James kissed my forehead. "They see you now. That's what matters." "Better late than never," I teased. "Much better," he agreed. "Though I always saw you from that very first coffee you served me." I smiled, remembering that day. "You were the only customer who ever asked my name." "Best question I ever asked," he said softly. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I thought about how life has a way of bringing things full circle. The past I tried to escape had become the bridge to my future. Marcus's attempt at revenge had only served to strengthen my bonds with the family I married into. Sometimes the very things we think will break us become the foundation of our strength. I learned that at 19, standing up to Marcus. I learned it again at 32, finally letting my truth come to light. The next morning, I would start my new role with the family foundation. But for now, I was content to sit under the stars with my husband, finally free from the weight of secrets and the need to prove myself. After all, the best revenge isn't in getting even. It's in living well, surrounded by people who love you for exactly who you are. "Pack your bags and get out. This house belongs to my son's new love now." My mother-in-law Eleanor's voice echoed through the two-story house as she threw my clothes down the stairs. I watched calmly as my favorite blue sweater landed at my feet, followed by the rest of my wardrobe. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 34, I was watching my marriage crumble while my mother-in-law gleefully sided with my husband's 23-year-old girlfriend. But unlike what they expected, I wasn't crying or begging. Instead, I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the recording app. "These recordings will interest your church group," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the chaos around me. Eleanor froze mid-throw, one of my dresses dangling from her manicured hands. "What recordings?" she snapped, but I caught a slight tremor in her voice. She knew exactly what I meant. For the past year, I've been documenting everything. Every cruel comment, every manipulation, every scheme she plotted against me. Eleanor Thompson, the respected church leader and perfect mother, had quite a different personality behind closed doors. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, descending the stairs with what she probably thought was menacing grace. "No one would believe you over me." I smiled, remembering all the times she used her reputation to shield herself from consequences. "Want to bet?" "I have quite a collection. Like last Easter, when you told the pastor's wife I couldn't attend the charity event because I was unstable, while actually locking me in the guest room." Her face paled slightly. "That's not. I was protecting you. Or maybe," I continued, scrolling through my phone, "they'd be interested in hearing how you sabotaged my birth control because you wanted grandchildren, then called me defective when I had a miscarriage." That had been 6 months ago. The pain was still fresh, but I learned to channel it into something stronger than grief. Each recording, each documented incident had become my armor against her cruelty. "You're just upset about Michael," Eleanor recovered quickly, straightening her designer blouse. "He's found someone more suitable, someone who can give him a family. Ashley is young, fertile, and half his age," I cut in. "Does your church group know you're supporting your son's affair with a girl barely out of college?" The look on her face was almost worth the past year of hell. "Almost." "You ungrateful little," she started, but I held up my phone again. "Careful, Eleanor. I'm still recording." She glanced at my phone, then at the stairs still littered with my clothes. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, calculating her next move. Eleanor had always been good at strategy. It's how she'd maintained her pristine reputation while systematically destroying mine. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice tight. I picked up my blue sweater, brushing it off carefully. "I want what's fair. Half of everything Michael and I built together. The house, the savings, everything." "Absolutely not." Eleanor's face reddened. This house has been in our family for generations. I only let Michael add your name to the deed because you never thought he'd get caught cheating. I finished for her. Or because you never thought I'd stand up to you. The truth was, I'd spent years trying to please Eleanor, thinking if I just tried hard enough, she'd accept me. I'd attended every church function, volunteered at every charity event, ignored every subtle dig about my common background. But nothing was ever enough. I have videos too, I added, watching her eyes widen, of you and Michael plotting how to force me out, planning how to hide assets so I'd leave with nothing. The timestamps match your Sunday school meetings perfectly. Eleanor sank onto the bottom stair, her perfectly maintained facade cracking slightly. You've been planning this. No, Eleanor. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. I started gathering my clothes, folding each piece carefully. The house was quiet now, save for the tick of the antique grandfather clock Eleanor had given us as a wedding present. To remind you of the passing time, she'd said then. I thought she meant our happy years together. Now I wondered if she'd been counting down to this moment all along. If those recordings get out, she began. You'll lose everything, I finished. Your reputation, your position in the church, maybe even your precious social standing. Imagine what people would say about the woman who helped her son abandon his wife for a college girl. Eleanor stood up suddenly, smoothing her clothes with trembling hands. I'll talk to Michael. We can arrange something. I nodded, keeping my face neutral despite the victory thrumming in my chest. That would be wise. And Eleanor? I waited until she looked at me. Next time you want to throw someone out of their own house, make sure they don't have receipts. She hurried up the stairs, probably to make frantic calls to Michael. I continued folding my clothes, each movement deliberate and calm. The recordings had been my insurance policy, my way of making sure I wouldn't end up like Michael's first girlfriend, the one Eleanor had driven away with similar tactics before she could trap her son. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Mom says you're being difficult. Just leave. It'll be easier for everyone. I smiled, thinking of the evidence safely backed up in multiple places. Easier for whom? I typed back. We should talk. Your mom can explain why. The message showed as read, but no reply came. That was fine. I had time, and more importantly, I had proof. Eleanor could throw my clothes down the stairs, but she couldn't throw away the truth I collected, one recording at a time. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls, 12 from Michael, 5 from Eleanor. I ignored them all and made my morning coffee, enjoying the quiet of my best friend Amanda's guest room where I'd spent the night. You recorded everything? Amanda asked, sliding into the chair across from me. She'd been horrified but not surprised when I played her some of the recordings last night. Every nasty comment, every scheme. I nodded, pulling up a folder on my phone. Started right after the miscarriage. Something in Eleanor's eyes that day. I knew she was planning something. I just didn't know what. The memory of that day still stung. I'd been in the hospital, barely processing my loss, when Eleanor had swept in with her designer handbag and perfectly practiced sympathy. Perhaps this is God's way of saying you're not meant to be a mother, she'd said, patting my hand. Michael needs someone who can carry on the family name. I'd started recording the next day. My phone buzzed again. Michael. This time I answered. We need to talk, he said, his voice tense. Mom's hysterical. What did you say to her? Just the truth, I replied calmly. About the recordings, the videos, everything. There was a long pause. What recordings? I played him a short clip, him and Eleanor in the kitchen 3 months ago, discussing how to transfer money from our joint account without my knowledge. His sharp intake of breath told me he recognized the conversation. Olivia, he started, but I cut him off. I'm done being the villain in your mother's story, Michael. I want a fair divorce settlement. Half of everything we built together. Otherwise, these recordings go public. You're blackmailing us? His voice rose with indignation. No, I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. Meet me at Carson's Cafe at noon. Bring your mother. We'll discuss terms. I hung up before he could argue. Amanda gave me a worried look. Are you sure about this? Eleanor's dangerous when she's cornered. So am I replied, but my hands shook slightly as I set down my coffee cup. Carson's Cafe was busy when I arrived, exactly as I planned. Eleanor would be less likely to make a scene with witnesses around. I chose a table in the center of the room and waited. They arrived together, Michael looking uncomfortable in his rumpled suit, Eleanor pristine as always in her church clothes. Of course she comes straight from Sunday service. Her reputation to maintain. This is unnecessary, Eleanor started as soon as they sat down. We can discuss this privately. No, I said firmly. We discuss it here. Now. I pulled out my phone and several printed documents. I want half of everything. The house, the savings, the investments. Everything we built during our marriage. That's ridiculous, Michael snapped. You can't prove. I played another recording. Eleanor coaching him on how to hide assets, discussing Ashley's role in their plan. Several nearby diners turned to look at us. Eleanor's face tightened. Turn that off, she hissed. Happy to, I said, stopping the playback. Once you agree to my terms. Michael looked between us, his confidence wavering. The house belongs to my family. Check the deed, I interrupted. My name's on it. Eleanor made sure of that when she thought I was her perfect daughter-in-law. Eleanor's perfectly manicured nails dug into the table's surface. You ungrateful little. Careful, I warned. We're in public. I gestured to my phone, and still recording. The waitress arrived with menus. We all declined to order. What do you really want? Michael finally asked. I told you. Half of everything. A clean break. No contests, no games, no more of Eleanor's schemes. And the recordings? Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. Stay private as long as you both behave. Think of it as insurance. Michael started to argue, but Eleanor grabbed his arm. She knew she was beaten. Her perfectly crafted image couldn't survive those recordings becoming public. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. We'll have the lawyers draw up papers. I smiled, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders. Perfect. I'll expect them by Friday. And Eleanor. I waited until she met my eyes. Next time you try to destroy someone, make sure they're not smarter than you. As I stood to leave, Michael grabbed my wrist. Why did you record everything? Did you never trust me? I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I've fallen in love with was gone, replaced by his mother's puppet. No, I said honestly, I trusted you completely. That was my mistake, but I learned from it. I walked out of Carson's cafe with my head high, leaving them to deal with the curious stares from other diners. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. How did it go? They agreed, I wrote back. Amazing what a little evidence can do. Eleanor and Michael had thought they could bully me into leaving with nothing. They've forgotten that sometimes the quietest people are the ones you should fear most. I'd been quiet for years, watching, waiting, documenting. Now they knew why. A month after our confrontation at Carson's cafe, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by moving boxes and fresh possibilities. The divorce settlement had been finalized faster than expected. Eleanor's fear of those recordings had apparently outweighed her desire to drag things out. My phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. Church newsletter just came out. You might want to see this. She attached a photo of the latest church bulletin. There, in Eleanor's monthly column, was a carefully worded announcement about Michael and Ashley's relationship, painting it as a beautiful story of two souls finding each other after his amicable divorce. No mention of the affair, of course. I laughed, remembering Eleanor's face when my lawyer had played the recordings during our final settlement meeting. Her precious reputation had survived, but we all knew the truth. Still spreading her version of events, I texted back to Amanda. Want me to send the recordings to the pastor? She replied. No need. Let her have her story. I got what matters. And I had. Half of everything, including the house which I promptly sold. Michael and Ashley could live with Eleanor for all I cared. I had my freedom and enough money to start fresh. The doorbell rang, interrupting my unpacking. It was Eleanor, standing there in her Sunday best, looking uncomfortable. May I come in? She asked stiffly. I considered closing the door in her face, but curiosity won out. 5 minutes. She stepped inside, eyeing my half-unpacked boxes. This is nice. What do you want, Eleanor? She twisted her hands together, a nervous gesture I'd never seen from her before. The recordings. Now that everything's settled, I want them destroyed. I leaned against the wall, studying her, afraid they might leak. They've served their purpose, she said. You got what you wanted. No, Eleanor. I got what I deserved. There's a difference. She flinched slightly. Michael and Ashley are getting married next month. And you're here because you're worried I'll send the recordings to the guest list. Wouldn't you? After everything. I walked to my desk and pulled out a USB drive. Here, the originals. Her eyes widened as I held it out. Just like that. Just like that. But Eleanor? I waited until she met my gaze. I kept copies. Consider it a reminder to treat your next daughter-in-law better. She clutched the USB drive, her knuckles white. You've changed. No, I corrected her. I just stopped letting you change me. After she left, I finished unpacking my living room, arranging photos of my new life. Trips with Amanda, my new job offer, the small garden I'd started on my balcony. No sign of my old life with Michael, no trace of Eleanor's influence. My phone buzzed again. A message from Michael. Mom says you gave her the recordings. Thank you. I typed back. I gave her what she wanted. Just like you did. Then I blocked his number. Later that evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, I scrolled through my phone's gallery. Among the new photos were the folders of recordings, my insurance policy against Eleanor's future schemes. She had her USB drive, but I had backups. Some lessons you only need to learn once. Amanda came over with takeout, a bottle of wine, and news about Eleanor's latest church committee drama. We laughed about it now, the power she once held over me reduced to amusing gossip. You know, Amanda said, raising her glass, I never thought you'd outmaneuver Eleanor. She always seemed unbeatable. I smiled, thinking of all the quiet moments I'd spent building my case, recording every manipulation, every scheme. She taught me something important, actually. What's that? Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting smart. My phone buzzed one last time, a final email from Eleanor. I hope you understand why I did what I did. I was protecting my son. I didn't reply. She'd gotten her USB drive, her pristine reputation, and her son's new marriage to celebrate. I'd gotten my freedom, my dignity, and the satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in her perfect world, Eleanor would always remember the quiet daughter-in-law who'd outsmarted her at her own game. And that was worth more than any recording.